She called the cops and screamed, "He's destroying HOA property." But those condos were standing on my land. That was the first thing I heard when I pulled up to my own gate that morning. My name's Jack Turner, retired Army engineer. And for the past 6 months, I'd been fighting the HOA that didn't even exist when I bought this land. They came later, built fences, signs, and now somehow 28 condos. On my soil, a woman in a floral shirt and big sunglasses stood with her arms crossed, yelling into her phone. "Yes, officer. He's trespassing again," she said, looking right at me. That's Karen, the self-appointed queen of Maple Ridge HOA. She had no badge, no paperwork, just the loudest mouth in the county. I kept calm, leaned on my truck, and waited. "Morning, Karen," I said. "You're calling the cops on me again?" "This isn't your land anymore," she hissed. "The HOA developed it. You didn't pay your community dues, so we repossessed." I almost laughed. "You repossessed 3 acres of private deeded property. That's bold even for you." Her smirk didn't fade. "You can argue that with the police when they arrive." A few minutes later, 2 squad cars rolled up. I recognized one of the officers, rookie, new to the area. He looked confused as Karen started pointing at the condos like she owned them. "He's a danger, officer. He's threatening our residents." I stood silent, calm, watching. I handed the officer a folded document. "That's the deed. Signed 20 years ago, before this neighborhood even existed." The cop opened it, frowned, and glanced back at Karen. "Ma'am, this says he forged that," she cut in, voice sharp. "He's lying. I have the HOA records." The officer looked torn, uncertain. I could see it, her confidence, his hesitation. The crowd from the condos had started gathering, whispering. My jaw tightened, but I smiled just enough to hide it. "I'll wait for your chief," I said quietly. "You might want to call him before you touch anything on this property." Karen's face twitched. "Why, you think you can scare us with your fake papers?" I didn't answer. I just pulled out my phone, tapped once, and the hum of diesel engines echoed from down the road. Her smile faded. "What's that sound?" I looked her dead in the eye. "That would be my demolition crew." Karen's face went pale as 3 massive trucks rolled into view. Yellow machines with the company name Turner & Sons Construction painted on the side. She stepped back, clutching her clipboard like it could protect her. The workers didn't even look at her. They followed my signal, calm, steady, trained. "Stop. Stop right now," she shouted, waving her hands. "This is HOA property. You can't just—" I raised a hand. The crew froze mid-step. The engines idled low, rumbling like thunder waiting to strike. "Karen," I said, walking toward her. "You built on my land. No permits, no consent. You knew what you were doing." She blinked fast, trying to recover her tone. "We had approval. The HOA board signed everything. There is no legal HOA board," I cut in. "The one that existed dissolved 6 years ago. You made up a new one, printed your own notices, even used my fence to hang your rules." The cop beside us shifted, clearly unsure which side was the law anymore. "Mr. Turner," he said carefully, "we need to sort this through city records before any action." "Already did," I said, showing him my phone. "County assessor, zoning office, title office. Every single one confirms this land is privately owned. By me." Karen laughed, but it was thin and shaking. "You think you can just bully your way through this?" "You'll be in jail before sundown." I stepped closer, just enough that she had to look up at me. "Funny thing about jail, Karen. It's meant for people who commit fraud, trespass, and forge government seals." Her lips parted. No sound came out. The officer's radio crackled. "Dispatch, we've confirmed the property belongs to a Jack Turner. HOA records appear invalid. Advise next steps." Karen's clipboard slipped from her hand. Papers fluttered everywhere. Fake fines, fake eviction letters, all with her signature at the bottom. I looked at the condos behind her, identical boxes built fast and cheap. Families inside watching from behind blinds, probably wondering what the hell was happening. "Don't worry," I told her quietly. "I'm not tearing anything down today." She blinked. "You're not?" "No," I said, turning toward my truck. "Not today, but you might want to tell your residents to start packing." Karen's eyes widened. "You wouldn't dare?" I looked back over my shoulder, calm as a soldier. "Karen, I fought wars for this country. You think I'm scared of a homeowners association?" And then I got in my truck, left the engines running, and dialed a number that made her knees nearly buckle when she heard me say it. "Yeah, Sheriff Daniels?" "Time to come by." I think you'll want to see this with your own eyes. The sheriff's SUV pulled up 15 minutes later, lights flashing but siren off. Sheriff Daniels stepped out slow, sunglasses on, hand resting on his belt like always. He'd known me since my Army days. We built half the training site for his deputies together years ago. Karen straightened her shirt and tried to smile, like she was about to sweet-talk her way out of a speeding ticket. Sheriff, thank God you're here. This man is— Daniels lifted a hand, cutting her off. Karen Miller, right? She froze. Yes, that's me. He pulled out a tablet and started scrolling. Got a stack of complaints under your name. Forged HOA citations. Unauthorized construction. You even filed an eviction order against a homeowner last month. Karen's voice cracked. That's all a misunderstanding. The HOA was acting within its rights. Funny, he said, because the county records show this entire development sits on land owned by one man, Jack Turner. The crowd behind us went silent. A few condo owners stepped outside, confused and worried. One woman holding a baby looked straight at me and whispered, "We bought here last month." What does this mean? Before I could answer, Karen snapped, "Don't listen to him. He's faking everything. He's not even supposed to live here." Daniels turned toward her, his tone sharpening. "You forged documents, Karen. That's a felony. You impersonated a government entity." Her hands started trembling. I didn't mean to. It was just to keep order. These people needed rules." I exhaled slowly. "Rules don't come from lies, Karen." The sheriff looked at me. "Jack, what are you planning to do with this mess?" I glanced toward the condos. "Depends how deep this goes. But I'm not letting criminals live rent-free on my soil. I'll handle it legally." Karen's voice rose, desperate. "You can't just take their homes." "I'm not," I said calmly. "But I'm taking mine back." Daniels nodded. "We'll need you to come down to the station, ma'am." She jerked back. "You can't arrest me for protecting the community." He sighed. "You didn't protect anyone. You conned them." The deputy started toward her, but she stumbled, eyes darting like she was searching for a way out. Then she smiled, too suddenly. "You think this ends here?" she whispered. "You really think I did this alone?" Daniels frowned. "What do you mean by that?" But she just smirked, whispering as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "You'll see. Some people in your own office wanted those condos built." Daniels froze for a split second. I caught the look in his eyes, confusion then suspicion, and that's when I realized this was a lot bigger than Karen. Daniels's jaw tightened, and for a moment the air felt heavy, like the whole street was holding its breath. The other officers exchanged nervous glances, unsure what Karen meant. She kept smiling, a strange, shaky grin that didn't fit her face. "Take her in," Daniels finally said, his tone firm again, but his eyes stayed on me, searching for something. I could tell. Her words hit him deeper than he wanted to show. As the deputies led her toward the car, Karen twisted back and shouted, "You think you're the hero, Jack? Wait till you find out who signed those permits." The door slammed shut, muffling her voice. The sound echoed off the half-built condos like a warning. Daniels turned toward me. "Jack, I need to see those documents you mentioned. The county confirmations, zoning reports, everything." I nodded, scrolling through my phone, sending him the files. "Already on your email. County assessor's records, zoning maps, deed transfer certificates. All real, but there's something else," he frowned. "What?" I pointed toward the cluster of identical mailboxes at the edge of the site. "Those aren't assigned to any postal route. Yet the condos have been getting bills. Water, electricity, even property tax receipts. All stamped by the city office." Daniels rubbed his forehead. "That's impossible. Those systems don't process without legal registration." "Exactly," I said quietly. "So either someone high up pushed it through, or someone inside the system made it look real." Before he could reply, my phone buzzed. A message from a blocked number. Just 3 words. "Stop digging, Turner." I showed it to Daniels. His expression darkened. "You got enemies now, Jack." "Seems I always do," I said. But this time they built on the wrong land. The crowd was still standing there, unsure whether to cheer or panic. One man, maybe in his 40s, stepped forward. "Mr. Turner, if what she said is true, what happens to us?" "We paid everything up front." I looked at him, at the kids watching from doorways, the women holding toddlers. "You all got tricked," I said softly. "You're victims too. I'm not here to destroy your homes. I'm here to destroy the scam." Daniels gave me a long look. "You're gonna dig deeper, aren't you?" I met his eyes. You know me, Sheriff. Once I start something, I finish it. He sighed. Then watch your back. If Karen was covering for someone in my office, this thing's gonna get ugly. I smiled just a little. That's fine. I've seen ugly before. The sheriff left with Karen in cuffs. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispering. I stood there alone, watching the sunset hit those fake condos and felt something twist in my gut. Because deep down, I knew she wasn't lying about one thing. Someone powerful wanted this land, and Karen was just the first pawn. That night, the wind howled across the open field where the condos stood, rattling the metal fences the HOA had put up months ago. I sat on my porch with a mug of coffee, the glow from my laptop lighting my face. County records, construction logs, zoning applications, every file I could find. And then it showed up, Permit Dlr 8945B, issued by the City Development Office, signed off by Deputy Director Richard Hale. I stared at the name for a long time. Hale, the same guy who sat 2 rows behind me at the Veterans Fundraiser last year. Daniels had introduced us. My phone buzzed again. Another blocked message. Last warning. Walk away. I leaned back, whispering to myself, now I know I'm close. A sharp knock hit my door. 3 quick taps, 1 pause, then 2 more. Military rhythm, not random. I opened it slow. Daniels stood there, hat in hand, face tense. You weren't answering your radio, he said. I was busy finding out your city office signed fake permits, I said. You know a Richard Hale? His jaw tightened. Yeah, he's on the city's development board. Used to handle zoning for the county, too. Why? I turned the screen toward him. Because he's the one who approved the condos. The same ones Karen said were reclaimed HOA land. Daniels stared for a long moment, then cursed under his breath. Damn it, I knew something smelled off. I stood, grabbing my jacket. We need to talk to him. Daniels hesitated. Jack, if Hale's involved, this could go beyond the city. The funding, the land transfers, everything might be tied up in state contracts. You start poking there, they'll come after you for real. I smiled faintly. They already are. We drove to the city office. Lights off, building closed, but 1 black SUV sat out front. The plate had no registration. Daniels parked a block away. That's Hale's car, he said quietly. We got out, walked slow, careful. The air was too still, too quiet. I noticed the side door slightly open, faint light inside. I pushed it open and the smell hit first. Burnt paper. Inside, the office was half-torched. Files scattered, computers smashed. Someone had tried to erase everything, and right in the middle of it, lying face down near a pile of ashes, was Richard Hale. Daniels knelt beside him, checking for a pulse, then looked up at me. He's gone. My gut sank. I looked around the room. 1 wall half burnt, but a single folder still hanging by a melted pin. I pulled it down carefully. The title read, Maple Ridge Expansion Phase 2. Daniels frowned. Phase 2? There's more? I opened it. Inside were blueprints, not for condos. For a private airstrip and storage facility. On my land, I met Daniels' eyes. This wasn't about housing. It was about smuggling. Outside, tires screeched. Headlights flooded through the doorway. Someone shouted, Sheriff, step away from Turner. We both turned. And that's when I realized the men stepping out of the SUVs weren't cops. Daniels instinctively drew his sidearm, but I grabbed his wrist. Don't, I whispered. They're not here to arrest us. They're here to make this disappear. The men moved like they'd done this before. Black tactical gear, no name tags, no badges. One of them barked, hands where we can see them. Their rifles aimed right at us. Daniels stepped forward, badge in one hand, gun holstered. Sheriff Daniels, Lincoln County. You're interfering with an active investigation. The man leading them smirked beneath his mask. Not anymore. This is federal property now. You and your friend are trespassing. Federal? On city land? That made no sense. I stepped closer, keeping my voice even. You boys sure about that? 'Cause last I checked, my name's still on the deed. He glanced at me like trying to place my face. Jack Turner, retired Army Corps of Engineers. We know who you are. You should have stayed quiet. Something in me shifted. That calm soldier part woke up. The one that used to read the battlefield before the first bullet flew. Daniels, I murmured. These guys aren't federal. Look at their boots, standard PMC issue. Private contractors. He followed my gaze, saw it too. His eyes narrowed. Who hired you? He demanded. The lead guy didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his vest, pulled out a lighter, and flicked it toward the last stack of files on the desk. Flames burst instantly, swallowing the paper. Daniels lunged forward, but 2 rifles snapped up toward him. I moved first, grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall, smashed it against the light switch, plunging the room into darkness. Gunfire exploded, short bursts, wild, panicked. Sparks flew as bullets hit metal filing cabinets. I dove behind the counter, dragging Daniels down with me. "You still carry that backup piece?" I hissed. He nodded, tossed it to me. "You sure you remember how to use it?" I smiled grimly in the dark. "I built half the weapons these guys are carrying." When the shooting stopped, one of them shouted, "Clear the room! Get the drives and pull out!" Their boots thudded closer. I waited until I saw the beam of a flashlight cross the floor. 1, 2, 3 steps. I rose fast, aimed low, and fired, just enough to hit the floor beside his boots. He jumped back, yelling, tripping into the desk. "Daniel's door," I yelled. He kicked it open, and we bolted through the back hallway, smoke still rolling behind us. We stumbled outside into the cold night. My truck was parked down the block, and we sprinted for it. Bullets cracked behind us, shattering glass. We jumped in. I hit the ignition. The engine roared. Daniels ducked low. "You know this isn't ending tonight, right?" I pressed harder on the gas, gravel spitting from the tires. "No," I said, watching the burning building shrink in the mirror. "It ends when they do." He looked at me like he wasn't sure if I was serious. I was. The headlights behind us flared again. 3 black SUVs closing fast, and as we hit the empty highway, I muttered the words that would start the next war. "They built condos on my land. Now I'll bring everything they built down with them." We didn't stop until dawn. Daniels drove like a man with too many ghosts, and I kept watching the mirrors. Every mile felt like a countdown. We pulled into an old barn I keep on the far edge of my property. Nobody comes out here much, and the place has a root cellar where I stash things people don't look for. Daniel slammed the door, shoved his badge into my hand, and finally let himself breathe. I handed him the folder Hale had clutched when he died. The blueprints had a stamped code in the corner, LD77. I'd seen that code before on a faded receipt in Karen's scattered papers. It tied the condos to a shell company called Meridian Holdings, and the mailing address was a luxury law firm downtown. "Meridian moves money like a ghost," I said. "They hide behind lawyers and fast paperwork." He frowned. "We run a background on Meridian, we find out who signs their checks." He swallowed. If Hale was trying to burn this, he was scared enough to go quiet. I pulled up a video on my phone, a loop from a camera I'd installed when I suspected squatters months back. The footage showed 3 men in suits meeting Karen by the mailboxes the week the first foundation went in. One handed her an envelope. She tucked it like it was a secret. The man in the middle looked up at the camera, smirked, then walked off. I froze the frame. He wasn't city staff. He wore a silver cufflink with a tiny eagle, the same kind worn by state-level contractors. Daniel's face went hard. That cufflink, Hale once joked he'd seen those on a state rep at a ribbon cutting. If that's true, this reaches into state government. We both heard a soft beep, my old door sensor. Someone had triggered the gate at the condos. I grabbed my gear and Daniel's his rifle. But I also grabbed the one thing Hale had left clutched in his hand, a folded receipt with 2 words underlined. Phase 2. I knew what Phase 2 was now. Not just a private airstrip, but a ring of businesses that would move whatever they planned to hide off my land fast and legal. We split up. I drove to the condos. Daniels went to the station to call in favors. The street smelled like wet concrete and fear. People clustered on porches, eyes pleading. A young woman, Maria, stepped forward. She'd paid cash for Unit 14 and had a background in accounting. Her hands shook when she handed me a USB. "I was told to scan HOA checks into this," she whispered. When I scanned them, the payer was a shell. I backed up everything before I left. Plugging that drive into my laptop felt like opening a trapdoor. Inside were PDFs, invoices, wire transfers, and a ledger that showed Meridian paying a shell company, Ridgeline Contractors, the exact amounts for each condo. The ledger also showed a payment with a memo, expedite, LD77. Someone had paid to make my land disappear on paper. I leaned back and said the thing I'd been thinking since the first truck pulled in. They didn't just steal my land. They laundered it into a map that belongs to their pockets. Daniels's call came in. We've got a name. State Representative Alan Breaker is connected to Meridian through a PAC. He's scheduled to speak at a charity gala tonight. I looked at the rows of little concrete boxes behind me, at the faces watching, at Maria clutching my sleeve. Then we go to his party, I said. We don't wait for permission. They built on my land, now we bring the party to them. Outside, someone in Unit 7 opened their door and shouted, "We just want our kids to be safe." I walked over, put my hand on the woman's shoulder. "You're safe with me," I promised. But inside, my head was already planning the next move. How to expose Meridian, how to show the public the receipts, how to make sure the men in suits couldn't bury Hale's evidence and my deed together. I had one more card. Years in the Corps taught me to leave no trace behind and to always keep a failsafe. Under the porch, hidden in the hollow of an old beam, was a drive Hale had missed when he burned his office. A backup of the city's permit server. If it was real, it would show every forged signature and every rushed approval. If it was fake, well then they'd already won. I slid the drive into my pocket, looked up at the condos and smiled without pleasure. They built 28 condos on my land, I told Maria. A week later, my crew showed up. Tonight, the people who paid for those condos show up at a gala, thinking they're untouchable. They're about to learn two things. 1, nobody likes getting scammed. And 2, I don't walk away from my land. We drove to the gala like men going to a wake. Shiny cars, clinking glasses. The kind of crowd that never thinks a man in a truck can break their night. Daniels wore a borrowed sport coat and kept his badge hidden. I wore my old uniform jacket under a plain shirt. Maria rode with us, gripping the USB like it was a grenade. She'd agreed to come because she wanted her money back and because she'd smelled something rotten long before I did. The ballroom was all chandeliers and soft laughter. State Representative Alan Breaker stood at the podium, smiling like a man who's never had to worry about a deed or a torch. Our city grows because of visionaries, he said, and thanks to Meridian Holdings, we're expanding prosperity. People clapped. I felt a little sick. Prosperity, for him, meant a private runway that would let things move quick and quiet. We moved through the crowd like ghosts. Maria slipped into the accounting office and handed the USB to a woman in a catering apron she trusted, from when she worked nights at the hospital. Upload everything to the banquet screen, Maria mouthed. The woman's face went white, but she nodded. Daniels found Breaker's aide and asked the right questions until the aide's smile cracked. "Sir, we've had complaints about expedited permits," Daniels said low. "Names connected to Meridian." The aide laughed, then faded when Daniels slid a photo across the table. The man in the cufflinks from my camera, standing beside Breaker at a ribbon cutting. The aide's voice shook. That was just a consultant. Breaker finished his speech and moved toward the VIP room for thank yous. That was our moment. I stepped onto the stage as a veteran and asked for the mic. The applause was polite, confused. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I'm Jack Turner. I fought for this country. I also own 3 acres called Maple Ridge." A ripple moved through the room. Cameras swiveled. I dropped the viral line they'd use online. HOA built 28 condos on my land. A week later, my demolition crew showed up. And tonight, some of the people who paid to live in those condos are in this room. Breaker's smile froze. "Who gave you this microphone?" He hissed. Security moved. "I didn't let them." "Your contractors and your shortcuts built more than homes," I said. "They built a pipeline to move things off my land. We have receipts, wire transfers, and the city permit server backup." I watched his face go white as the crowd buzzed. On the banquet screen, the catering woman, brave and quick, had started the upload. PDFs flicked up, wire transfers from Meridian, Ridgeline invoices, the LD-77 stamp, and then a list that tied Breaker's PAC to Meridian's shell accounts. Gasps. Phones lifted. Someone from the press started filming. Breaker lunged for the screen, shouting about doctored files. "Those are fake!" he barked. That's when the first twist crashed like a wave. From the back, a man shouted, "We bought those condos. We were scammed." He wasn't in the press. He was a condo resident, one of the families Karen had invited. He held up his phone and streamed the live feed to a local news aggregator. Within minutes, 3 stations were pulling the banquet feed. The crowd turned into a public jury in seconds. Breaker tried to call for security, but the aides around him glanced at their phones and backed away. Then came the second, harder twist. Maria's USB had a hidden folder with a video. Not invoices, but a clip of Meridian executives handing cash to a man in a suit with the same eagle cufflinks. The clip ended with a single line. Phase 2 moves tonight. Whoever recorded it had been inside the meetings. Whoever that was still out there. Breaker's face went red.
"This is a setup,"
he shouted. "You have no proof these files are real." Daniel stepped forward and said one thing that shut the room down. "We'll verify them at the station. In the meantime, you're not leaving." Breaker barked orders. Security tried to close ranks. People in the crowd started chanting, "Where's our money? Where's our home?" But the room's noise was a cover for a quiet move I didn't see until too late. A pair of men in suits slipped toward the back exit. The same kind of men who burned Hale's office and chased us on the highway. They headed for the valet where a black SUV sat waiting. I started after them. Daniels grabbed my arm. "Don't," he hissed. "They'll scatter if you give chase." I did chase, I had to. The man with the cufflinks jumped into the SUV and the car peeled away. I got a glimpse of the license, Meridian's lawyer plate. We caught a tail on the nearby street but lost them at a junction. They were fast and they had money to burn. Back in the ballroom, cameras still rolled and the crowd pushed closer. Breaker's aide whispered into a phone, voice small. I realized we had pulled one string and the web was bigger than we thought. Someone had cameras, lawyers, and enough police favors to torch an office. But now there was also a new force nobody had counted on. The people who paid for those condos. Maria squeezed my hand. "We make them answer," she said. I nodded. "We make them answer in public." Outside, the black SUV disappeared into the night. Inside, the banquet screen cycled through files. Names, transfers, and a single line that made my blood jump. Next shipment, 48 hours. Airstrip ready. I looked at Daniels. "They're moving faster." He swallowed hard. "Then we move faster."